Now let's kind of go through and talk about the loss of trust or broken promises. Because you each had shared that there were conversations prior to the acquisition occurring that seemed to either be broken or changed or ignored, whatever. So do you want to start with your experience?
So I was brought in as a potential owner. When the larger firm came down to visit, they did it multiple occasions, probably 7, 8 times, where they would come down for a couple days at a time. And I was brought in probably 3 or 4 different occasions for an entire day, where we would sit down with their executive management group. And it was really just a get to feel each other. What do we do here? How do we approach things? And it was just really a download with me, which personally made me feel like I was part of the process. So to be frank and honest, I was actually very excited about the route that it was going. It was a bigger firm, which brought more possibilities, more work than just in the Phoenix Metro, Arizona area, and you could kind of expand our wings a little bit and move and grow. I was even included in the actual closing of the deal. Like I flew out to Michigan. I was there for 3 days, and they put out all the bells and whistles, and it made me feel like I was a part of the leadership group. And then they introduced me to some things like business development that I had never been introduced before. So there was a lot of positive for me in terms of where that was going. When we were the smaller firm, we were predominantly all residential development, very little of anything else. And that here in Arizona is what completely imploded. And I look back, Atwell coming in and acquiring HEC, from my perspective, actually saved my job, because of the work that they were able to bring to the table and the experience that helped me win work here locally is what got me anyway through the downturn that came. We were acquired, I think it was in May.
It was in May
of 2007, and I'm guessing August, September of 2007, we started making layoffs because of the Great Recession, and I mean like drastic layoffs. Like 20, 30 people at a time.
Was
it the week after?
It was the week after the acquisition took place.
Okay, so it was a lot sooner than that.
That's pretty intense.
And I don't think we, at HEC, I don't think we had ever laid off people. There may have been a few people that had some problems, might have been let go, but we'd never had layoffs.
Yeah. And so I'll looking back, there were a lot of people that attributed the downturn to Atwell acquiring HEC, which I'm not trying to say that Atwell did things perfectly in their acquisition, but I think it is unfair to say that it was all Atwell's fault that we went through the experiences that we went through with the downturn. So going through the downturn, so it was a high, but it was also a low, because I'd come into work Monday either fearful for myself being laid off just because of the economy, or having to lay people off, because we'd always have these discussions week to week to week to week. But my experience and lack of trust actually happened well after the acquisition. It was 2009. The bigger firm had made some decisions financially that weren't in the best interest of the firm, and they were at a point where they had to make some drastic changes or they were going to go out of business. There was an individual in another office within the firm that was of great potential that they wanted to bring on as an owner, and they were afraid they were going to lose him if they didn't bring him on. And so they brought him in mid-2009 as an owner, and that individual mortgaged his house to purchase into that ownership. And unbeknownst to all of us, or some of us that weren't at the very top of the leadership, it became apparent in the fall that they were in discussions with the bank for the bank to take over the company to keep us from defaulting. And what they were going to do is they were going to basically shell the current company and create a new one and leave all of its debt with that shell of a company. And so they brought this individual on who mortgaged his house and bought in to only, not even 6 months later, lost all of that ownership, still owed all that money to the bank. And it was just they knew about it too, and they never shared it with him. And so it was a complete disappointment to him, obviously. And just seeing how that interaction happened, that was, to me, just kind of like, I don't think I want to be a part of a firm
Yeah, no doubt.
that would put one of their own
and
in
their
a position like
family,
that.
right?
Yeah, I
entire
mean, this is your
family.
partner
Yeah.
that you've put in a position like that. And subsequently, that individual had to stay around in order to pay off his debt and then fulfill his non-compete. And so he went through what he deemed a 3-year prison sentence and then left. And he since has created his own firm in Nashville, out in Tennessee, and he's doing really well.
Sure.
And so I found this nice little window out when they were moving to the new firm. I didn't sign the agreement and I left.
So did you get some ownership when you made the transition?
I did. Mine was given as ownership in the firm.
Oh.
And it was a certain number of shares. It was a very, very small percentage of the bigger firm. But yeah, I had that ownership, which ended up going away in that.
Yeah, no value when you walked away.
And I don't necessarily blame the bigger firm for that. That was a product of the recession.
Yeah.
I really experienced it because when I left, they sued me for about a year and a half.
Okay.
And I had to spend about $20,000 of my own money to fight it.
Wow.
It ended up going nowhere, thank goodness.
All right, we'll come back to some of the things that you shared about really everything, the 2007, 2008 market downturn, that villain became the new company, Atwell. So Bruce, tell us about your loss of trust or broken promises experiences.
So my sense of loss of trust stemmed from this conversation that we had, which to me was 100% black and white a couple of years before the acquisition took place, that, hey, we want you to be a partner. It may take us a little time to get there and figure that out, but we want you to be a partner. And there really wasn't any conversation about that over that next 2 years, but there was always this sense of it's going to happen. When it came time to have this acquisition take place, I didn't have the same experience that Bryan had. I didn't have a conversation to say, hey, Bruce, we want you to be a partner, or even just an acknowledgement. And it took, maybe a month and a half of trying to have that conversation. I think I had actually gone and talked to Bryan a little bit and told him I'm really frustrated that nobody will even really talk to me. And I think Bryan went and talked to the owners of HEC and said, hey, you guys really ought to just go visit with Bruce. And they did. They had a conversation with me, and these are men that I really looked up to, that I felt like I was in the trenches with them, helping grow this company from a 10-person firm to a 100-person firm over the time I was there. And the response I got was, I don't know what you're talking about. Except for one of them. One of them said, no, Bruce, I know that we had the conversation, but it just right now isn't the time. And so I think my feelings toward him were, okay, at least he acknowledges, hey, we had the conversation. But the whole sense of this is a good thing was very hard for me to believe, because I really felt betrayed with that group. There were certain things that I liked about the new company, that it was bigger. They had this business development that we were all like, wow, this is awesome. This is really great. They had a training program, and they had a progression of how you could become an owner. They had different levels of responsibility, and you could see that there was a path to get to that. So in that regard, that was good. And especially they had Atwell University, similar to what we're trying to do with EPS University, to have some training. So that I looked at and thought, okay, that's good. And they had a program where they could bring you in as a potential partner, an associate, a different level of, hey, you're part of this group, you're on your way to become part of the ownership group. And I think partly because I felt a bit jaded that I didn't really see the value of that program. So for me, this acquisition, I looked at it and said, oh, everything that I used to love about my employer is now different, and it's different because the acquisition took place. And I was already starting to see the economy was starting to take a turn for the worse, but it was easy for me to say, it's because this big group came in and bought us. And if it was just the 4 partners that used to be here, I had such a close relationship with them. I thought, well, I would be fine. We would all be fine. And it was easy for me to kind of attribute, everything's just different because this company came in now. And hindsight 2020, I don't know that other company was bad. It was just different, and it was so different that for me, I ended up not staying very long. I stayed for a few months, and then it was just became apparent to me I wasn't comfortable being there anymore.
What would you attribute to your decision, like percentage-wise, of the bigger company just being different versus your betrayal?
I would say probably 90% the betrayal, and maybe 10% because it was different.
Yeah, no, very powerful. And I think, lesson learned that I took away from our initial discussion was all of us need to really write down what we perceive are going to be the broken promises, or if there's already broken promises that have been made.
Yeah.
And then, that next step is what level of control do you have over those things that you feel are fear or concerns or promises, whatever it is. And then your belief was, you kept repeating this story over and over in your mind that I can't trust them.
Yeah.
If they're going to do this to me at a time when I thought I probably had the most value to this firm, then what would they do in another situation,
Sure.
right?
Yep.
But I think the deal breaker for me when I heard that story is when you then sought the truth.
Yeah.
You went to the 3 original guys, and 2 of them completely dismissed ever having
Yep.
or denying that they had the conversation. That would have been a deal breaker. I have heard some of these same concerns from both our associates as well as the associates of Northern Engineering at various levels, right? They're not the same, they're not exact. The other thing that you had mentioned, you did receive some financial benefit. How did you respond to that?
So when at HEC they had a bonusing program, and they gave very nice bonuses. When they sold the company and they had this acquisition, they said, hey, we're going to give a bonus to all of our staff that helped us get to this point. And I actually received 2 different bonuses. I received one from HEC, and then I received a second from the one partner who acknowledged the conversation that we'd had about being an owner. With that bonus, we had to sign a notice that we would stay at the company for a year and a half. And if we didn't stay at the company, they requested that we would give that bonus back. I ended up leaving 3 months later, and I wrote checks to all 4 of them for the bonus that came to me from the group of them. And I did that because I personally wanted to leave with my head held high, saying, I kept my commitment. I signed a piece of paper, I'll give you that money back. And it was on the order a little over $8,000, but I gave that back to him. I had a conversation with the one individual who gave me the other bonus, and he said, hey, you've earned that, you do not need to give that back to me. I appreciate all the work that you've done since you've been here, and that actually went a long way to repairing my relationship with him. I felt like it was honest for me, and I felt it was very honest of him, so I appreciated that.
Yeah, that's powerful. And when you think about the timing that you did this, is in the economy was in the tank, that $8,000, you could have just sucked it up, Buttercup,
Yeah.
right? And kept your nose down and just got through those 18 months.
Yeah.
But the truth within inside you was that you were almost betraying yourself by staying.
I was. I couldn't. I just didn't feel like I could stay, and it was very important to me to say, hey, I did what I said I would do. I
Yeah.
signed a little paper. You guys didn't keep the
Yeah.
promises that I
Yeah.
felt like you had made. You can have your money back.
Wow, that's powerful.